what is not my decision. I said you can talk to Director Patel.
You don't have to try to.
You think you've got a gotcha with Tom Homan, our borders czar,
excuse me,
who's been out there fighting for our country since Donald Trump took office.
I'm trying to ask you a question. Regular order, please. And you don't have to defer to the FBI director to pass the buck. So I'm asking you, will you support a request so that the committee, or indeed I believe the American people, should be able to see that video or audio tape? Will you support that request?
Will you apologize to Donald Trump for trying to impeach him?
I guess the answer is you won't support that request.
After you now know that Joe Biden tried to cover up Hunter Biden's involvement with Ukraine.
Excuse me, let me do this, because I think it's valuable that the American people get a sense of what you've refused to answer today. So these are just some of the questions you refused to answer, or have answered with personal attacks on members of this committee. You were asked whether you consulted with career ethics lawyers, as you promised you would do during your nomination hearing, when you approved the president receiving a $400 million gift from the Qataris. You refused to answer that question. You were asked who or what role you may have played, or who played the role in asking that Trump's name be flagged in any of the Epstein documents gathered by the FBI. You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether Homan kept the $50,000 bribe money. You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether Homan paid taxes on the $50,000 bribe money. You refused to answer that question. You were asked, did career prosecutors find insufficient evidence to charge James Comey? You refused to answer that question. You were asked, how are military strikes on these boats in the Caribbean legal? And you refused to even answer that question.
You were asked, a law degree,
excuse me. You were asked, did you discuss indicting James Comey with the president? You refused to answer that question. You were asked, did you approve the firing of antitrust lawyers who disagreed with the Hewlett-Packard merger? You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether you support a restoration fund for violent insurrections to attack the Capitol on January 6th. You refused to answer that question. You were asked whether you were firing career professionals, career prosecutors, just because they worked on January 6th investigations. You refused to answer that question. You were asked by my California colleague whether you believe government officials, like immigration officials, have to abide by court orders. You wouldn't even answer that question. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing.
Oversight?
Excuse me, you can attack me after my time is over.
You've attacked all of us, including President Trump, for your entire career.
You can attack me later, and I know you've got plenty of canned attacks. We've heard them all day today.
Canned attacks on you?
This is supposed to be...
No one needs a canned attack on you.
Regular order, Madam Chair, I'm trying to speak. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing of the Justice Department. And it comes in the wake of an indictment called for by the president of one of his enemies. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing, and it comes in the wake of revelations that a top administration official took $50,000 in a bag, and this department made that investigation go away. This is supposed to be an oversight hearing when dozens of prosecutors have been fired simply because they worked on cases investigating the former president. This is, and now the current president.
What about the fires in California? Do you care about that, Senator Schiff?
This is supposed to be an oversight hearing in which members of Congress can get serious answers to serious questions about
the riots in LA serious?
About the cover-up of corruption, about the prosecution of the president's enemies. And
I think you owe the president an apology.
When will it be that the members of this committee on a bipartisan basis demand answers to those questions and refuse to accept
Clearly you're a failed lawyer because you don't understand when someone can and cannot answer a question.
Refuse to accept personal slander as an answer to those questions.
Personal slander? Will you apologize to Donald Trump for slandering him? Personal slander?
Senator Pam.
May I ask unanimous consent, Madam Chair, to introduce into the record the statement of 1,000 former Justice Department officials who warned that the Comey indictment is a democracy-threatening abuse of power. May I also request unanimous consent for the introduction into the record of 282 former career officials at the Justice Department raising an alarm who were voluntarily or involuntarily forced to leave the department because of improper actions taken by the Department of Justice. May I introduce, with unanimous consent, the Justice Department manual that talks about when initiating and declining charges are subject to impermissible considerations. And finally, Madam Chair, may I introduce the letter for Michael Ben-Ari, a career counterterrorism prosecutor, DOJ, a letter he nailed to his door, which concludes by urging officials to do the right thing for the right reasons, to follow the facts and the law, and raises the alarm that the decision to remove experienced career officials from U.S. attorneys' offices, the FBI, and critical parts of DOJ undermines our country's abilities to counter terrorist organizations, malign nation-state actors, and countless others that seek to harm our nation and its citizens. And he believes that the priority is prosecuting the president's enemies
or are you admitting
rather than
Bondi,
protecting
Ms.
the
Bondi,
country.
one moment.
May I have unanimous consent to enter these into the record?
Without objection.
Thank you. I yield back.
Senator Britt.
Senator Moody, may I clarify one thing he entered in the record? I just want to say that I believe he entered a letter by 200 and something former employees. Well, I believe the spokesperson for that letter was also the spokesperson for Jack Smith.
Senator Britt. Thank you, Madam Chair. General Bondi, I want to talk to you about the next generation. I want to talk to you about our kids. People who don't have a seat at the table but need us to fight for them tirelessly. When you look at this, I see a couple of different buckets of ways that bad actors are taking advantage of our children, and in some of the most extreme situations, we lose that child, whether to death or to self-harm, and I think we owe it to them to do something about it. So first is social media. Tell me, what are you doing? I have sat across from a number of parents who have talked to me about their child either falling victim to sextortion, different schemes that are online. We also know that there is an element of human trafficking that comes here. Let's start with social media. What are you doing to hold bad actors accountable, to track them down, and to keep our kids safe?
Senator, first, thank you for bringing that up. This, I believe, is what an oversight hearing should be about.
Thank you.
Not yell, oh, he's gone already. He comes in and leaves. This is what an oversight hearing should be about, trying to help parents and children online. Yes, Director Patel has been doing a great job. The FBI, we have an entire unit. Not only that, our National Security Division is working internationally.
Well, and I want to talk about that too, because I think a lot of this comes from overseas.
Yes.
And so whether it's these schemes, the sextortion schemes,
Yes.
et cetera, it's happening off our shores. How are you connecting the dots there? And then additionally, let's look at human trafficking. And you find a number of times people are lured into this from posts on social media. I believe that is a global trafficking ring. I would like to speak to what are you doing to make sure you're holding those people accountable and getting to the bottom of it, finding bad actors and making sure that we're keeping these children safe.
Senator Britt, we have made countless cases around this country, and many of them have involved global, international defendants. In fact, we've been extraditing some of them back. As many as we can get, we're bringing them back to this country. That's how we're holding them accountable and locking them up for as long as we humanly can lock them up. And Director Patel, our National Security Division, have been working tirelessly on that. We have entire units working on that. I think the most
Do you feel
important-
like you've made better strides than we saw over the last 4 years?
We have made incredible strides. I'm sorry, I don't have the statistics in front of me, but yes, we have made, I'll
I would
provide
love to
those
get
to you.
those from you. I want to make sure that we are doing that. I also obviously have worked diligently alongside Senator Blackburn and so many others to put the proper guardrails in place when it comes to social media to prevent these things from happening to our children, allowing them to still thrive online, but knowing the threats that are out there, it is incumbent upon us to actually do something about it. So I hope that those different pieces of legislation that would help keep kids safe, help give you additional tools, I hope that this body and ultimately Congress will take those up.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah, sure.
That parents also, I always say your child has no right to privacy on the internet. And parents need to monitor what their kids are doing. Now, we all know that even elementary kids, school kids, so many of them have cell phones. because they're at school, they're latchkey kids, they're coming, riding the bus home. So many children have cell phones, but parents, you have to monitor. There are safeguards you can put on the phone, but you have to monitor
I also
what your
think
kids
that-
are doing on the internet
I
as
do
well.
think that there is some accountability that needs to be held even with social media providers.
Absolutely.
Because I know that, for instance, we had a judiciary subcommittee hearing where we heard from parent after parent whose child had, bought something online that they thought to be maybe a different type of drug. It was laced with fentanyl. They died. If that was happening on a storefront and a small business in America, we would shut that storefront down. We must do more to hold not only the bad actors online, but also the people who allow it to happen accountable. And I hope that you'll commit to work with me on that.
I wholeheartedly agree. Thank you,
So
Senator.
staying in that vein on parents, looking at illegal gaming across, again, this is a global thing, offshore illegal gaming. We have found that young men in particular have been targeted when it comes to betting and being involved in this legal gaming. We're finding that through whether it be advertisements or things that are directly targeted to get them addicted and get them pulled in and addicted on that. When it comes to illegal gaming, will you commit to me to taking a look at what is exactly happening offshore and also how they are utilizing different spaces to actually go after our children, getting them addicted, and ultimately pulling them in?
Certainly, and I'm also sure the FBI would welcome working with you.
Wonderful. And then last but not least on that same vein, and you touched on it earlier when one of my colleagues asked you about this, but vaping. So if you're a parent and you're sitting here looking, Chinese vapes have, this is a real issue. You spoke a little bit about what you are worried will come next in this space. What are you doing to get to the bottom of that, and how are we going to make sure that these don't infiltrate our markets and ultimately don't end up in the hands of our children?
What we've been doing is we have been going around this country and we have been raiding these vape shops that are carrying these illegal drugs and shutting them down. And that's what Senator Kennedy and I were in Illinois doing. We were announcing that arrest. It was a massive arrest of illegal vapes from China, mainly coming in through China, laced with THC. Back to the, I was just saying, back to the child predators. Since January 20th, we have made 2,580 child exploitation cases, Senator Britt. That was the number I was trying to get my hands on.
Wow. And
That's 250 more than last year.
will you commit to continuing to go after these unregulated products and particularly make sure that they are not in the hands of our children?
Yeah, and Senator Britt, we need to do that because it's targeting our children. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much. Today is obviously the second anniversary of the horrific attacks on October 7th. And this morning I had an opportunity to listen to stories of some individuals that had been held hostage, some of the families that will never get their loved ones back, and some that are hoping that there is a resolution soon and they once again get to embrace their family member that they have not seen in over 700 days. It was a reminder of, one of them said, I can live, I can breathe, but I can't live until this is resolved. And we know in addition to this horror and nightmare that they have been living for the past 2 years, we have seen a rise in anti-Semitism here on our soil. When we said never again actually has to mean never again. And I know that you and I spoke about this briefly when you were in front of this committee, but can you talk to me about the work that DOJ is doing to combat that rise in anti-Semitism and to hold offenders of that, to hold them accountable?
And Senator Britt, thank you for again bringing up that today is the second anniversary of that horrific attack on Israel. Donald Trump is the greatest peace president of our lifetime, probably in our history. And if anyone can resolve this, it will be Donald Trump. I've also met with many of the families of the hostages and of those who have lost loved ones. We are combating anti-Semitism throughout this country, not only through my Civil Rights Division, and we haven't really talked about Harmeet Dillon a lot today, but Harmeet Dillon runs our Civil Rights Division, and she is working with Leo Terrell, and they are combating anti-Semitism around this country. We have an anti-Semitism task force that we're
Do you
forming.
mind getting me an update on the progress that that task force has
Absolutely.
made, please?
Sure.